What's up, everybody, and welcome back to Fireside Giants. I'm your host, Anthony Rivardo, joined by my co-host, who's not here, Alex Wilson. It's just me today, and I'm going to react to some of the storylines coming out of the NFL Scouting Combine and around the NFL with free agency just around the corner. Now, as you know, we've discussed a lot of the quarterback situation for the New York Giants in recent episodes, talking about their potential trading for Matthew Stafford. They're aggressively pursuing him. Connor Hughes today of SNY reported that it's the worst kept secret at the Combine that the Giants are trying their hardest to trade for Matthew Stafford. So we'll continue to update you on that as any more news rolls in. But I want to shift away from the focus of the quarterbacks today and kind of discuss some of the other storylines that might be sweeping under the radar. So in addition to talking about Trey Smith being franchise tagged by the Kansas City Chiefs and what the Giants might pivot to on the offensive line and free agency, I also want to go through, before I do that, the list of prospects that the Giants have met with so far at the Combine and give my brief quick take on each of those players. So, number one, first and foremost, the Giants did meet with Penn State pass rusher, edge rusher Abdul Carter. And Carter is dealing with an injury now. It's become known that he has some sort of stress fracture, I believe, in his foot. They're saying that it's not going to require surgery and that he might be able to compete at his pro day next month, but it is something that needs to be monitored down the line. So Carter, arguably the top prospect in the draft class, was definitely in play for the Giants at number 3 overall if they get a quarterback by other means other than the draft. But now with Carter dealing with this injury, I think that's something to keep an eye on. But regardless, he's still one of the best players in the draft class. Yes, this injury is somewhat concerning, but still, you're banking on that elite talent. He is a truly game-wrecking potential pass rusher with experience playing off-ball / inside linebacker as well. So a versatile defensive talent, arguably the best in the draft class. He'll be high on the Giants draft board. Now, another player that the Giants met with was Georgia linebacker Jalen Walker, and he's projected to be probably a top 10 pick. He's a rangy and athletic linebacker, and he had this to say about his meeting with the Giants. Quote, "I feel like it went well. The conversation with them was wanting me to be in the outside linebacker role. I feel like whatever they do, they'll make the best decision for their club." That's the end of the quote. So kind of interesting there. We know that the outside linebacker role for the New York Giants is a pass rusher, an edge rusher. So Walker, an athletic freak from the linebacker position at Georgia. Yeah, he might play off-ball linebacker for some teams, but other teams might view him as more suited to be a pass rusher at the next level. Sounds like the Giants are one of those teams. Now, next player that the Giants met with, Boise State running back Ashton Jeanty. And obviously, you guys all know about Ashton Jeanty. He's one of the best prospects in this draft class. He is definitely one of the best playmakers. He's one of the best collegiate running backs, probably of all time, was the Heisman Trophy runner-up. Don't expect the New York Giants to draft him. Honestly, I think that if they did, this fan base would just about explode. But picking number 3 overall, it's too rich for a running back. Yes, I know that's going to draw, that statement alone might draw comparisons to 2018 when the Giants selected Saquon Barkley number 2 overall. But again, the Giants back then, they weren't positioned to build around the running back. They still aren't. They're still in a rebuild mode, and they still need to find a quarterback first and foremost. Jeanty, if the Giants do trade down, potentially can become a player on their draft board. And you guys know I always advocate for drafting best player available, and he probably could be the best player available if they trade down. I do think you have to factor in positional value. And while the running back position is valuable once again, as proven by this last season, I still think the Giants are going to favor other positions in the draft, even if they trade down, and Jeanty is the best player on the board. Same thing for Tyler Warren, Penn State tight end that the Giants met with. This guy crushed records this past season in his final year in college, was named the first team All-American, was named the best tight end in all of college football, won the John Mackey Award. He's 6'6", 257 pounds. He's only 22 years old. He's an absolute freak of nature, and he's good friends with Theo Johnson, who the Giants drafted last year. Tyler Warren is the best tight end in this draft class. Last year, the class was blessed by having Brock Bowers in it, a generational tight end prospect. While Tyler Warren might not be Brock Bowers, but he's also not that far off. He's a really great playmaker. And again, in a potential trade down scenario, maybe Warren is the best player on the draft board. However, positional value factored in, I don't think the Giants would lean to take a tight end in the first round, even if he is BPA. But man, he is a tremendous talent. The Giants did meet with him. Next player up that the Giants met with was Ohio State edge rusher Jack Sawyer. He's a pretty interesting player. He dominated in the collegiate football playoffs. He had a good regular season. He had an utterly elite playoff run. And he had this to say about his meeting with the Giants. Quote, "I really liked their meeting. It was really good. Dable and those guys do a really good job over there. I went on to say something about how they haven't been too successful lately, but thinks they're going to be really good soon. Yeah, he said they'll have good seasons in the future too. 22 years old at 59 tackles, 9 sacks in 16 games last year. I believe 4.5 of those sacks, though, came during the collegiate football playoffs, and he had a touchdown, forced fumble, touchdown return in the playoffs as well against Texas. So a really good player, somebody who I don't think is a round one option for the Giants, even if they do trade down. He might go back end of round one. This is more so if the Giants are on the clock at number 34 and Jack Sawyer falls, maybe he's an option in the top of the second round. Another player, this is more of a realistic trade down potential prospect that the Giants could consider. Michigan defensive tackle Mason Graham. I did a solo on him about 2 months ago, I think, on this channel, discussing the idea of the Giants potentially trading down only a few spots. He's going to be a top 10 pick, so the Giants wouldn't be able to trade down far and still grab him. However, Mason Graham next to Dexter Lawrence would be utterly deadly. He is one of the 5 probably best prospects in this draft class. He's honestly dominant as a run defender, but has tremendous upside as a pass rusher as well. I could absolutely see the Giants, if they do trade down, just being enamored by Mason Graham and his ability. National champion winner, of course, not this past season, but the season prior with Michigan. A really good player, pound for pound, one of the best in the draft class. Giants did meet with him. They might have some interest in him in a potential trade down scenario. Now, any of these other players, let me scroll through and see if there's somebody else. Oh, here's one last thing on Tyler Warren that I mentioned earlier. Just have to read this quote off to you guys because we're Giants fans, so you're going to love this one. Quote, another guy I saw this summer was Jeremy Shockey and the way he played. His mentality running the ball was something I kind of liked and kind of did a little bit this year. Awesome stuff from Tyler Warren, emulating Jeremy Shockey, likening his game to him. I think that's pretty exciting. And like I said, man, if the Giants were in a different situation where they could draft him, he would be a hell of a pick, but I don't think he's too likely. So another player that the Giants met with and had a formal meeting with was Georgia safety Malachi Starks. He's the number 1 ranked safety in this draft class, according to Pro Football Focus. He's their number 17 overall prospect. He wasn't an All-American this year, but the season prior in 2023, he was an All-American. He's a ball hawk. He can get his hands on the football. Had quite a few pass breakups and interceptions back-to-back seasons. Really good player in a really good Georgia defense. I don't think he's much of an option for the New York Giants, but we know with safeties, sometimes they tend to fall in the draft. Maybe they feel like they're a lock to go round 1, and most prospects or most analysts do. And then somehow, some way, they fall into the second round. We just saw that last year with Tyler Nubin, who the New York Giants drafted in the second round of the draft. So if Malachi Starks does fall into the second round, I could see a world where the Giants say, okay, let's do this again. Another second round safety here. Now we've got Tyler Nubin, Malachi Starks paired together for the next 5 years or 4 years, I guess. 3 technically, because that's all it's on Tyler Nubin's contract, but I have to assume he'll be good enough to get a second contract. That could make for a really nice backline duo for the New York Giants long term. So I actually do think Malachi Starks is a player that you guys should keep an eye on as Giants fans because, not only do I think that he would be a top target in a potential trade down in the first round, but absolutely if he does fall into the second round, which I think is reasonably possible. I wouldn't bank on it, but it's possible. He would definitely be among the best players available with the number 34 overall pick. And I could see the Giants once again, if they are going best player available, being enticed to pretty much just lock down their safety duo for the next several seasons. So, yeah, that's pretty much all of the players that I saw today who were formally interviewed by the New York Giants and formally met with them. Doing a quick scroll to see if there's anybody else that I had written down. And no, I don't think so. Kobe Bryant, cornerback from Kansas. That's another one. I actually don't know enough about him to really give you guys a take. However, he is a prospect that the Giants did meet with, and I'll do some research on him for the future. But big talk of the town today. The Kansas City Chiefs are just saying, screw the salary cap. They're just going to go ahead and place the franchise tag, fully guaranteed, $23 million on Trey Smith over here. And I know a lot of you Giants fans really wanted Trey Smith. That was the number 1 player that you wanted the Giants to pursue in free agency. I don't think he was my number 1 just because I thought he was going to get egregiously overpaid on the open market. He's going to get paid regardless. Now I think more moderately in a homegrown, talent situation where he gets an extension from the Chiefs. He was among the top targets that I would have considered if I were the Giants if he did hit the open market, but officially now he won't be hitting the open market. And Joe Shane did say during his press conference on Tuesday that they have a hole at right guard that they need to fill. They've got 4 returning starters on the offensive line is what they project, but they do feel as though they need to get a 5th guy in there at right guard. And Trey Smith obviously would have plugged and played and been one of the best right guards in the NFL for the New York Giants had they been able to sign him. But now that he's been franchise tagged, unless they rescind that tag, the Chiefs, which I think is highly unlikely. I think they really want to keep Trey Smith around. Or if they make him available for trade, we could pretty much cross him off the list for the New York Giants because I don't think either of those two things are going to happen. So who could they pivot to and target instead? So here are a few names that I think could be under consideration for the New York Giants. First off, let's talk about Will Fries. I think I mentioned him recently on the channel. I think Alex and I had a pretty good debate about him, in fact. He's a player who was a 7th-round draft pick several years ago. He's not even 27 years old yet, still young, still ascending, was playing the best ball of his career this season, was graded out by PFF and every other metric as one of the best right guards in the NFL. Then he broke his leg. And the tricky part here is he was playing really well, and he's a player who's gotten better every single season of his career, and he's definitely an above-average guard. However, this was like a monumental jump. It's not like he had several seasons of elite play. He had several seasons of average to above play and then 5 weeks of elite play. Can he get paid like an elite offensive guard? I think he intends to this offseason. I don't know if the Giants should take that kind of a risk. He is a player who's ascending, continuing to develop, and the Giants have really struggled to develop talent. So unfortunately, I'm not sure that Will Fries makes a ton of sense for them. However, if they feel like they can unlock something and he can continue to ascend and develop here, I mean, he really does have a lot of talent and he's young and he could be signed to a long-term deal and possibly at a bargain because he's coming off of that injury. Another player, and this is one that I personally really like, is Tevin Jenkins from the Chicago Bears. Guy is a great run blocker, has actually made market improvement as a pass protector in recent years, was a 2021 second-round draft pick for the Bears, and, has had his ups and downs, but also has versatility that I think is worth mentioning. So he's played both left guard and right guard. I want to say that he settled into a left guard role. Yes, this past season, all of his snaps came at left guard, and he settled into that role full-time as a starter. However, in the seasons prior, in 2022, he was full-time at right guard. 2023, he made the switch over to left guard halfway through the season. This past year, he's stuck at left guard. And here's the thing about Tevin Jenkins. I know that the Giants need a right guard, and technically he's a left guard, but the Giants also have John Runyon, who last offseason, they ran into the same problem with. Well, he was playing right guard recently, but he's traditionally left guard. Where do we plug him in? And the answer was, we're going to plug him in wherever we need him. And they ended up needing him more at left guard than they did at right guard. But now, this offseason, I think with Tevin Jenkins, he's a left guard, sure. But you've also got John Runyon, who's a left guard. But both of them have the ability to play on either side of the line. So in my opinion, I think he could be a good target as a guy that you bring in and you say, we've got 2 good guards. We're going to let him compete. We're going to see where we need the other one who performs better here, who performs better there in training camp and preseason. And that's where we're going to plug him in. I don't think that harms the Giants in any way, especially considering all the injuries that they've had on the offensive line in recent years. Having 2 legitimate starting offensive guards that can play on either side of the line at a moment's notice, I think is actually a positive. So Tevin Jenkins is one of those guys. Yes, he's technically a left guard. I think he'd be fine playing right guard, starting for the New York Giants. And in fact, I think he could do that at a very high level. He would be one of my personal top targets for the Giants in free agency this offseason. Still young, not 27 years old yet, ascending. You can get him on a 3-4 year deal once he's into his 30s, maybe negotiate a new contract. But I think that he's a great run blocker. He's made really great improvements as a pass protector, and he's got the versatility that the Giants value on the offensive line. So keep an eye on Tevin Jenkins now that the Giants are out of the Trey Smith sweepstakes. Moving on here, I want to mention this one guy because he just got popped up on the trade block, and that is Jonah Jackson from the Los Angeles Rams. So the Rams, if you guys aren't keeping up, now have Matthew Stafford that they're entertaining trade offers on. Cooper Kupp was given permission to seek a trade, and now Jonah Jackson has been given permission to seek a trade. The reason for all 3 of these is the fact that the Rams are overpaying Kupp and Jackson is, I think, how they feel about it, and they need to make some cap space improvements, and they are an aging team that wants to get younger. Now, Jonah Jackson being a player who's 28, and honestly looks like he's on the decline rather than the incline. They kind of overpaid him, in my opinion, in that 2024 offseason that they signed him to a 3-year deal. And now only 1 year later, it sounds like they're having buyer's remorse. Me personally, I know a few of you have commented about him in our recent episodes and said, hey, maybe he could be packaged along with, with Matt Stafford in a potential trade, no, thank you. I just don't think Jonah Jackson has ever been that great of a player, not a player that I'm willing to give up significant draft capital to acquire. And I really don't want to inherit his contract, which, let me confirm, is paying him $17 million per season. I don't think Tevin Jenkins is getting $17 million per season. Maybe he does, but I'd rather give him that money than give it to Jonah Jackson. So that's just my take on it, especially considering he's only got 2 years on his contract left. There's just not a lot of insurance with that deal for a player who was benched this past season and is on an overpaid contract. And, you don't know what he's going to be. I don't want to pay him 2 seasons in a row. So that's just me personally with Jonah Jackson. Wanted to give you guys my take on him since he was recently popped up on the trade block and, has been floated in this idea that there could be a 2-for-1 potentially in that Matt Stafford trade. I think more likely Cooper Kupp goes wherever Matt Stafford goes than Jonah Jackson goes, in my opinion. But maybe Jonah Jackson is just so cheap in a trade that, you can't say no to it potentially, but the contract makes you say no, in my opinion. So here's a few other guys, these veterans, Kevin Zeitler and James Daniels, Brandon Sheriff. These are some guys who are on the free agency market this offseason that I think are going to sign very cheap 1-year contracts. But I do think all of those guys are going to be searching for win now opportunities. Brandon Sheriff in particular, formerly of Washington, and you guys definitely know, was a very good starter for a very long time, a former All-Pro / Pro Bowl player. Really not that anymore. He's 33 years old now, and, he's past his prime. But as a guy who could step in for 1 season and give you average guard play, that's good. You can definitely feel comfortable paying Brandon Sheriff and expecting average guard play. And he should be relatively affordable. So that's a player that I would keep an eye on for the Giants if he's looking for a 1-year deal. James Daniels is the same thing, but problem with him, he was playing good football last year with Pittsburgh. However, tore his Achilles. Not a player that I would target personally if I were the Giants. And Kevin Zeitler, we've mentioned him a few times on the channel. Obviously, we all know him because he used to play for the New York Giants. He's almost 35 years old now. He's actually been getting better pretty much every single season, which is crazy to think considering his age. However, I don't think he's going to be interested in the Giants. He's been here before. I don't think his tenure was everything he wanted it to be. And unfortunately, the Giants are a 3-14 team. They're not the most attractive destination to a 35-year-old who just played for the Detroit Lions and Baltimore Ravens in his last 2 stints. I think he's going to continue ring chasing, or at least a deep playoff run chasing, since he hasn't gotten the ring yet. But he wants one. So I don't think the Giants are going to be an option for him. However, if the Giants are willing to overpay to bring Zeitler over here and lure him away from contenders, you can't really argue against it if you can get him on a 1-year contract, because he is one of the best guards in the NFL, right guard as well. And some of these other names, Patrick McCarry, Alex has mentioned him so many times on this channel. He's very versatile, has played every position on the offensive line, could be a stopgap right guard for the Giants or fill in anywhere if they have injuries. Aaron Banks is one, former second-round pick with the San Francisco 49ers. Not a great player, but is still only 27. Perhaps he could grow moving forward, and maybe the Giants want to take a chance on him. Cheap contract, but wouldn't be my preference. And here's the guy, if the Giants are going to make any of these reunion signings, that I would be interested in, and that's Will Hernandez. I think Will Hernandez, when he was with the Giants, was a solid average guard. He left the Giants to go to the Cardinals and became a well above average guard. Now, he did have an injury this past season. Let me see. It was a knee injury, so, not good. Ended his season in week 5. I believe he tore some sort of a ligament. That's not what you want to see. But I don't know. I think he's still a good enough player. I think that injury is going to make him very inexpensive on the free agency market. He's a player that I think had a good time when he was with the Giants, was a good player for the Giants. Makes sense. I know it was a long time ago. I think he's been with the Cardinals for 4 seasons now, but he's gotten better across that time, and the Giants do need a stopgap starter at right guard. So considering Hernandez is probably going to be cheaper coming off of this injury, I think that you pay him an inexpensive contract, take a flyer on him, see if he can work back from that injury. He's 29. Guards can sometimes play until they're 34, 35, like we see with Zeitler. I think Hernandez still has a little bit left in the tank if he recovers from this injury. Makes sense to me as a signing. So that's pretty much going to round out all of the options on the free agency market that the Giants can target at right guard now that they've missed out on Trey Smith. Again, Trey Smith, everybody missed out on him. Nobody even had an opportunity. The Chiefs are going to franchise tag him again. We'll see if he gets put on the trade block or if they rescind that franchise tag. If that happens, of course, we'll update you here on Fireside Giants. But these are the top candidates that I think the Giants have to sign at right guard, or Jonah Jackson is a potential trade candidate. But again, I'm also curious to hear your guys' thoughts, not only on these guards, but on the draft prospects that I mentioned, who the Giants are confirmed to have had formal meetings with. They will have more meetings throughout the week. They're going to meet with Cam Ward, Shedeur Sanders, Tyler Shuck, all of these guys. That's random late round quarterback that I know some of you are interested in. So, and we'll continue to do more research on all these guys, film breakdowns, stuff like that as we get closer to the draft. It's only February. Keep in mind, we've got all of March and pretty much all of April to do those film breakdowns and such, and give you guys our big boards and draft rankings and personal opinions and mock drafts, all of that good stuff. So just make sure that you leave a like, and if you did enjoy this episode, and subscribe to the channel if you're new. Stay tuned, because again, all that great content that I mentioned, it is on the way. So make sure you subscribe and ring the bell so you don't miss an upload. Make sure you go ahead and follow us on all of our social media channels at Fireside Giants, and that's pretty much going to do it. I'll catch you all in the next one. Have a good one, and let's go Giants.
Perfect.